Good evening and welcome to 40 Days Friday Night Delight session number 201. On April 25th, we're going to study Gog and Magog. This is a topic or a name that may often come up when people who like to talk about end time stuff get something that they want to sensationalize or impress people with knowledge. Very often, sites that try to provide clickbait or hype stuff because they like to talk about eschatology. They'll bring up the battle of Gog and Magog because strange sounding names can attract attention. We are going to be looking at that, and where we will start this and should start this always is in the Bible itself. In the Bible, I did a Google search of Gog and Magog, and I went to openbible.info, and these are a lot of scripture verses that were pointed out to us. And as you see, a lot of Ezekiel, some Revelation. What you'll have to do if you're trying to do a study similar to this, use Open Bible Info to give you reference texts. In the original search that I typed, there was an AI overview, but we skip that. Don't look at the AI overview, simply because the AI overview can be wrong. In some cases, it takes information from websites that may outright be wrong. Intentionally or unintentionally, they will be wrong. So go straight to the word, fill your mind with the knowledge of the word first, then check commentaries, commentators, and of course the AI overview as well. You could check it then and formulate your understanding and interpretation. We first would look at Revelation chapter 20, verse 8, and we'll read, "And will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea." Who's coming out to deceive nations and gather them for battle? Disgusting old Satan. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison. At this point, if you're in your study and this is the first verse you choose to read, you will see this and you'll wonder, what prison was Satan in? If you didn't know before. And that's why we need to do proper study. Proper study means get the background for it if it's relevant. Some things happen and there may not be any immediate background to it. You just jump into the topic and go. In this case, we do need to look, what prison was Satan in? And we see here the names Gog and Magog mentioned. And if I look back, the 1,000 years are ended. 1,000 years should sound familiar to 40 Days people. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. This bottomless pit is the abyss. The good old abyss where angels are imprisoned for breaking God's laws. And the demons and the pigs begged not to go there. So we know that the abyss is a terrible place for even them. And the angel seized the dragon, the ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. If you notice, bound him for 1,000 years. Threw him into the pit, shut it, and sealed it over him. He might not deceive nations any longer. So that means he's deceiving nations now. He's not deceiving you and me. He's deceiving nations of people. Leaders, opposition leaders, criminals, decent citizens, pastors, teachers, apostles, evangelists, children, men, women. He's deceiving nations. But he'll be thrown into a prison for 1,000 years until the 1,000 years are ended. He'll be released for a little while. So we've studied the millennial kingdom, and we know that the devil will be in prison for that time and released after. Here, after the 1,000 is over, and you notice they keep repeating 1,000 years. So even though this is a vision, John is specifically saying 1,000 years each time. So the millennial kingdom is expected to last 1,000 years. That's not a figurative term like the day of the Lord or Daniel's 70 weeks or for an hour. You see a couple of times things, the Antichrist will be given power for an hour, right? Um, he's going to be released, Satan is going to be released from his prison, deceive nations that are the four corners of the earth, that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. So Satan is going to gather a ton, whatever is a ton, like more than that, a ton squared, a ton cubed of people. And they're going to come up to march and surround the camp of the saints and the beloved city. What beloved city is that? Jerusalem. So Satan and his deceived billions or millions will be gathered to destroy Israel. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. When Jesus returns at the end of the Great Tribulation, the beast and the false prophet, the sea beast and the land beast, the Antichrist and his side chick, the false prophet, they will be thrown into the lake of fire. The devil will be thrown into the abyss. Then, after 1,000 years, he'll be released from the abyss to do this nonsense. After he gathers this army of people, the devil will be thrown into the lake of fire. This is good news. Our study is what is Gog and Magog, because those names will come up. All right. Now, based on readings here from Revelation 21-3 that we did, and Revelation 21-3, I mixed up the numbers, and Revelation 20, verses 7-10, we can see Satan was locked. God has a plan for him to be released. So, however he gets released, that's part of God's plan. Even if it is, like covert, secret missions of angels and men trying to release Satan from the abyss, that's part of God's plan. And it's predicted already. And when he is released, he's going to go about leading and influencing men to hate on Israel. Even in that time, Jesus is reigning in Israel. Israel will be easy to hate. Just to remind you, in the previous verse, I don't want you all just taking my word, right? Verses 19-21. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was seated on the horse, the rider on the white horse, Jesus, and against his army. The beast, the kings of the earth, and their armies were gathered against Jesus and his army. And the beast was captured. The beast here, Antichrist. The Antichrist was captured, and with it, the beast, the false prophet, who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast, and those who worshipped the image of the beast. These two, beast and false prophet, were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur, and the rest were slain by the sword that came from the mouth of him who was sitting on the horse, Jesus. And all the birds were gorged on their flesh. This happens just before the devil is chained in the abyss. Now, after the devil was chained in the abyss, I want to show you something. In verse 4, then I saw thrones. Seated on them were those to whom the authority to judge was committed. Also, I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image, and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. So we see here martyrs coming to life to reign in Jesus' administration. It leads to an issue that we need to get resolved. We see here this is the first resurrection. In Daniel 12, 1 and 2, because I went looking for first and second resurrection stuff as well. So in studying Gog and Magog, we're going different places to understand it fully. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. He is talking about the great tribulation. But at that time your people shall be delivered, every one whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel here is telling us that the dead will rise to one of two destinations, some to everlasting life, and the others, some to shame and everlasting contempt. This is supported in Jesus' words in John 5. I want to get us to John 5, verses 28 and 29. You'll see why I'm bringing these up. Just John 5. John 5, 28 and 29. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in tombs will hear his voice and come out, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. Little sidebar for a second, just to make sure you all understand. The doing good and doing evil is not what saves them. By doing good here means doing the will of their father. Doing evil also means doing the will of their father. If your father is God, you will go to resurrection of life. If your father is the devil, resurrection of judgment. So doing good doesn't get you to heaven. Okay? These verses, Daniel and John that we read, they do not separate the rising of the saved from the unsaved in terms of timing, but they do say that there'll be rising to life, rising to suffering. Okay? But there will be a judgment of all people. And the wording here has me a little confused, or it had me a little bit confused. Revelation 4, again, 20 verse 4, sorry. Where he saw the souls of the ones who were beheaded. Seated on the thrones were people with authority to judge. Souls of the ones beheaded and the ones who did not worship the beast or receive its mark, they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 was ended. So this doesn't seem as if all of God's people are risen. In Daniel's reading, or was it? Daniel, I want to give you Daniel again. Verse 2. And many of those who sleep in the dust shall awake. Now, as we look at this and we see many, Daniel says many. And Revelation 20 only mentions the ones on the throne with authority to judge and the end time matters. It doesn't seem to be clear that all of God's chosen people will be with him here. So it's good to ask the question, will all of God's chosen people rise at this point? I'll tell you, shortcut, yes, but I have to provide proof, right? So I had to find proof that all of God's people are going to rise to live in the millennial kingdom with Jesus. And many commentators say that. Many preachers, videos, and so on would say it. That doesn't make it right. We still need proof in the word. Okay? So when I went searching for the saints, yes, we're off Gog and Magog, but we're still on target because we need to understand background stuff, right? I went looking and I had to go to 1 Corinthians 6. 1 Corinthians. I'm seeing 6 on my thing, but I seen 16 on the internet stuff. Let me see if it's here. 1 Corinthians. Oh, yeah, it is here. 1 Corinthians 6, verses 2 to 3. Or do you not know that the Lord's people will judge the world? And if you are to judge the world, are you not competent to judge trivial cases? That's pretty much all we need, but let's continue. Do you not know that we will judge angels? How much more the things of this life? So here, Paul has blurted out something very helpful to us in our topic. Even though here in 1 Corinthians 6, he was blasting that church for the way that they were handling lawsuits among the brothers of Christ. So they had a problem. He was blasting them for that. But in blasting them, he gave us very important information. The Lord's people will judge the world. He didn't say some of the Lord's people. The Lord's people will judge the world. It's clear that we, if we are children of God, will judge the world. It also indicates to me that there'll be a worldly element during the millennial kingdom's time. Can we have proof of that? I'm not going to try to prove that right away, but we're looking at different things here, right? Let's go to Daniel 7. Daniel 7. And we're looking at verse 27 of Daniel 7. Whoa, too far. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. And his kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. What's that see mean? Oh, that's just different wording. In Daniel 7:27, we see here that Christ's everlasting kingdom will suddenly and abruptly be given to the saints. Why I say abruptly is because in this description of the fourth beast given to Daniel by an angel, Daniel had asked a question. He desired to know the truth about the fourth beast, right? And he asked a question, and an angel was telling him. And if you look at verses 23, 24, 25, he's talking about the fourth kingdom on the earth, the fourth beast, which will be what we call the Antichrist system, and the nations. 10, you see it here, the usual thing, 10 horns, 10 kings shall rise, and another shall rise after them. He shall put down 3 kings. All that is Antichrist stuff. That's how we'll know the Antichrist will rise out of 10 kings, and he will kill 3 of them. And he will speak words against the Most High, and he'll think to change times. And as they're talking about the Antichrist, they shall be given into his hands. The saints will be given into his hand for a time, times and a half, 3.5 years, the Great Tribulation. Suddenly, it changes from the Antichrist reigning and having power and doing the destructive things, but the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away. Sudden and abrupt, he's going to lose everything. And as I said before, it shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. This suggests to me that the millennial kingdom will be a preview of the everlasting kingdom of God. You'll get an explanation for that after. Daniel 7, by the way, also talks about the 4 beasts. It starts with talk about his vision of the 4 beasts. In verses 1 to 8, he talks about the 4 beasts that he sees. The last beast will be the machine of the Antichrist. Machine here is not a literal machine. It's a word I'm using for the whole system that'll bring the Antichrist. In verses 9 and 10, Daniel sees the return of avenging Jesus, the Ancient of Days. His clothing white, his hair on his head like pure wool, his throne fiery flames, a stream of fire that came out from him. That's avenging Jesus. We'll see the casting of the Antichrist in fire in verses 11 and 12. The beast was killed, its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. And you'll notice the rest of the beast, their dominion was taken away. They lost their power, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time, 1,000 years. In verse 12, the destruction of the army of the beast was mentioned, and the other three beasts are to be left. In verse 14, Jesus returned to rule as described, and he's going to rule over an everlasting dominion. This everlasting kingdom and dominion, his kingdom shall not be destroyed. This everlasting kingdom starts with the millennial kingdom. The millennial kingdom has a definite end. So it only makes sense that the everlasting description here, it means the millennial kingdom will lead into the forever kingdom. So Jesus' rule will not be interrupted or broken. It's just the millennial kingdom is one way on earth, while there will be sin on earth still. Then the devil will be released at the end of the millennial kingdom, and the final victory and judgment will be done after those things happen. One more place to look, Revelation chapter 3. And remember, we're looking for the saints, right? Revelation 3, verse 21. To the one who's victorious, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. Here, Jesus is saying, while talking to the lukewarm Laodicean church and talking about the lukewarm Laodicean church, he clearly says, we who conquer will sit with him on his throne, and anyone who sits on a throne in biblical prophecy is going to be a leader and a judge of matters. So there is definite proof to support the view that all God's people will be rising at the first resurrection to reign and judge with Christ, because you can't come to reign and judge if you're in the ground. And we read here, to whoever conquers, this last one, to whoever conquers, I'll grant him to sit with me on my throne. So whoever conquers, and what we're talking about conquering here is conquering self, right? Because the Laodicean church was a lukewarm church. And they've acquired wealth. They say they don't need a thing, but God was telling them, buy gold refined with fire, become rich, meaning take on, deny yourself, take up the cross daily. That refining, we know the refiner's fire is the tribulations of daily life that come when you stand with Jesus. We saw in Daniel 7 that the whole kingdom will be given to the people of the saints. That in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul said, saints will judge the world. All of us. So there is proof to say all of us will be here at the first resurrection to reign and judge with Jesus. Does this mean that Dr. John MacArthur was right when he said the 24 elders in the symbolic vision of heaven, that they are representative for the raptured church of God? It's possible. I'm not saying for sure yes, but it's possible. Okay? When God here talks about the second resurrection, in Revelation 20, verse 5, he says, the rest of the dead, right? This is not the first, right? The rest of the dead who did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. So that's a second resurrection. The first resurrection is the ones who come to judge with Jesus. Verse 12 talks about the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. Books were opened. Everything mentioned in this little paragraph here talks about second death, This is the second death. It talks about death, Hades, lake of fire, and they were judged. And he was thrown into the lake of fire. Anyone whose name was not found written. So this second resurrection would be all the people who are in the bad part of Hades. They're going to rise to be judged and then sent to the lake of fire. So general consensus, the first resurrection, all the saints will rise to come and reign with Jesus. Second resurrection will be for the lost to be judged and sentenced. Now, judged here, not judged guilty or not guilty, but judged as unrighteous because they have already been found lost. Found as and lost, not found lost, found as lost people. Now we're going to bounce to Gog and Magog. All our work just now was to determine that in Revelation 20, the devil is going to be released from the abyss. After he's released from the abyss, he's going to gather up an army of people, because on the earth at that time will still be sinful people, even though Jesus' millennial kingdom will be ruling. The millennial kingdom will not be the whole earth. In terms of, it will not be saints of God filling the earth. There'll be saints of God as judges, but other people too. Some will be saved, some won't. All right? And a lot of them will turn against Jesus when the devil gathers them. He deceives them and he gathers them to come against Jesus. So when he gathers them in Revelation 20, we saw it, that at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. So we have the background. This is a gathering of world armies against Jesus after the millennial kingdom. Let's go into the words themselves. Magog was first mentioned in Genesis chapter 10. So we're going to see first mention of it to get the history of it. Genesis chapter 10. And you'll see in verse 2. Now, Genesis chapter 10, the table of nations, the account of Shem, Ham, Japheth, which would be Noah's sons. If you don't know, Noah had 3 sons with their wives, and Noah and his wife were the ones who were saved from the great flood. Shem, Ham, Japheth. Ham was cursed. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog. Here we go. One of Noah's grandsons was called Magog, right? It's his grandson. So Noah's son Japheth had a son Magog. So one of Noah's grandkids was called Magog. Now, this is the only mention of him in this book. So we don't really know where he goes from here, because some of the guys got mentioned. So sons of Gomer, and we got some guys, sons of Yavan, another son of Japheth, was given, but we didn't get anything more about Magog here. Magog was next mentioned in First Chronicles, Ezekiel, our texts. All right, First Chronicles was just basically listing sons of people, and it listed this son. All right. This name Magog referred to, as it was mentioned in Ezekiel now, where we'll go to next, this name referred to people or a region. So we take it, it's a group of people associated with a particular place on earth. They were usually seen as hostile to God's people. So we could have gone looking for Magog. And I did a word search for Magog to see what it was talking about. And they were hostile people. They were situated to the north of Israel. And you'll see evidence from that in our text as we go along. Okay? But in Ezekiel 38:2, Son of man, this is God telling Ezekiel the prophet to say, Son of man, set your face toward Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. So this Gog kid was very powerful, a chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and he's off the land of Magog. So he's in charge of Meshech, in charge of Tubal, and he's from the land of Magog. In Ezekiel 39:1, there's a similarity here. And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog. Again, God is telling him, prophesy against Gog and say, thus says the Lord God, behold, I'm against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Gog is like a leader. So we're establishing certain things. Gog is one person, a leader. Magog is the country, the land, the people, the society he's from. So we're establishing certain things. Yet in Revelation 20, remember our main text, the devil will come out to deceive nations that are the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. We'll see why later on. Using Ezekiel 38 and 39, we'll see some evidence that the Gog here and the Gog of Revelation are not the same. Revelation is referring to him, but not literally talking about him. Okay? God talks about hurting these people, the enemies of Israel, in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So if you remember when we said it, set your face towards him and prophesy against him. That's 38. So God's prophet is going to prophesy against him. And 39, prophesy against Gog. So twice we see he's going to prophesy against this man, this leader. Okay? And there's mention of using all kinds of things and what's going to happen to him. So let's look at some of the things that's going to happen to him. Okay? In verse, is it chapter 9? Yes, in Ezekiel 39, verse 9. Then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out. The Israelites who Gog of Magog has gathered armies to come and destroy. The Israelites who dwell there, they will go out and make fires of the weapons and burn them, shields and bucklers, bow and arrows, clubs and spears. They will make fires of them for 7 years, so that they will not need wood out of the field or cut down any out of the forest, for they will make fires of their weapons. Here we're seeing that after Gog gathers his armies, and it's not just his country, it's other countries too, he's going to gather them. Proof that it's other countries, sorry. Persia, Cush, and Put are with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his hordes. Beth Togarmah from the uttermost parts of the north with all his hordes. Many people are with you. So we see a reference to the north, one, and we see that many nations are gathered to come against Israel, and the prophet is speaking against them. In verse 11, which I just read, which I was almost about to read, verse 11 here of chapter 39, there is mention of a graveyard for Gog's army. On that day I will give to Gog a place for burial in Israel, the valley of the travelers, east of the sea. It will block the travelers, for there Gog and all his multitude will be buried. So when he says he's giving it to Gog, he's not like saying, oh, Gog, here's something for you like a present. God here is saying, I'm going to set aside this land where you and all your grimy army people are going to be buried. It'll be called the Valley of Hamon Gog, which would mean, let's check what this says, the multitude of Gog. So it's a valley for the multitude of Gog where they will be buried. And you ain't going to be buried unless you're dead. So Gog and his army are going to die. We saw a little taste of what's next in verses 17 to 20. Check this out. There's a lot to read. As for you, son of man, thus says the Lord God, speak to the birds of every sort and to all beasts of the field, assemble and come. Gather from all around to the sacrificial feast that I am preparing for you, a great sacrificial feast on the mountains of Israel. And you shall eat flesh and drink blood. You shall eat the flesh of the mighty and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, of rams, of lambs, and of he-goats, of bulls, all of them fat beasts of Bashan. And you shall eat fat till you are filled, and drink blood till you are drunk, at the sacrificial feast that I'm preparing for you. And you shall be filled at my table with horses and charioteers, with mighty men and all kinds of warriors, declares the Lord God. God here is telling the prophet to speak to all the animals. I'm going to drop a whole set of bodies for you to feast on. Whose bodies is he going to drop? The army of Gog, of Magog, and all his allies. Now, with all of this, a little bit of proof comes in. The feasting here, the 7 years of fuel that we read about earlier, that he's going to give them. Where is it? Right. They're going to burn. Israel is going to get, like, from the weapons that they pick up, from the dead army, after Gog's army is wiped out. Israel will not need to take wood out of the field or cut down any of the forests to make fires, because they'll have the weapons to burn for 7 years. This is going to be a huge army that's gathered. And the whole country of Israel doesn't need to go and cut firewood from any living tree or dead tree, because the army of Gog will provide enough wood for that. If they're going to burn it for 7 years, right? And he says it's not like they will have enough to make fires if they need for 7 years. He'll say they will have enough to make fires for 7 years. So they will not need to cut wood and so on. Israel will be in existence for 7 years. After this battle has not happened. Let me make sure you get that clear. This has not yet happened. If Israel is going to need 7 years, not need, but if Israel is going to use these weapons to burn for 7 years for fuel, that means Israel has to exist for 7 years after. This is going to happen before the Great Tribulation, before the tribulation. It might run into the tribulation. I'm not saying it can't, but it will definitely happen before the Great Tribulation, because during the Great Tribulation, Israel has to hide. Remember, they'll be borne away on the wings of the great eagle for 3.5 years. We've done that prophecy a long time ago. When the Antichrist can't get them, when Satan can't get them, and Satan will turn against Israel's children, which would be the Gentiles who are saved on the earth at that time. The devil is going to turn against us, well, if we're here, because rapture should happen. The devil is going to turn against those like us, because Israel will escape. So Israel's not going to be there to burn these weapons that they gather outside of Israel, right? So this first battle of Gog, of Magog, and his allies is going to happen before the Great Tribulation. It should start, well, obviously it will start before the tribulation, 7 years, and it might run into the tribulation, but it will definitely be done before the Great Tribulation, right? None of this can happen after the millennial kingdom. So here's my proof. We need that 7-year period for them to burn the weapons and use it. And they're living here. There's not like a special function. It's just normal life. We need fuel. Go out on the field and grab some weapons and bring them to burn. That's basically what it's going to be like. Free fuel to burn. The new heaven and the new earth of Revelation 21 comes after the great white throne judgment. So there's no 7 years into that. So it can't run then. All of this to say, the first battle of Gog and of Magog will be before the Great Tribulation. All right. So I checked godquestions.org, by the way, and they were the ones to prove to me that there were two separate references. Because when I did my initial work, I had found that 7 years of fuel thing, and I kind of forgot it. So in my head, I was thinking Gog and Magog, one battle. We only seen them once. And then I read God Questions, and they're like, no, it's two. Ezekiel's prophecy, which talks about the 7 years. Afterwards, there'll be so many weapons to burn that we don't have to go and cut down a tree for anything. And then the one in Revelation 20. Yes. Okay. So God will miraculously deliver his people from a terrible enemy twice. The first time, his people is going to prosper with the spoils of war. The second time is going to lead to the great white throne judgment, which we'll see here. All right, so after Gog and Magog's army are destroyed, the fire from heaven will consume them. We have the great white throne judgment next. Something else I found that I needed to just go and check back on is, if you remember, in Ezekiel 38, Magog, the land, Gog was chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. What do they have to play in this? What part do they have to play in this? I'll talk about those two and then I'll close off. Okay? Tubal and Meshech, we need to talk about them. Meshech, oh, some translations have Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. All right. Most of them, though, don't mention Rosh because it's not in the original interlinear. The interlinear does not have Rosh mentioned. Okay. Meshech were most likely the Mushki or Mushku people mentioned in Assyrian records. They were known for trade, military prowess. Meshech was considered a distant land, often associated with Tubal. The people of Meshech were known for their involvement in trade of slaves and bronze. So if you're going to have trade in slaves, you had to have a strong military presence. Bronze was a material used for making weapons. So they were involved heavily in abusing people and profiteering off war. Tubal was also a grandson of Noah through Japheth. Tubal is often associated with people or region known for trade as well and metalwork, similar to Meshech, but it's different because their context, their reputation, they were often found or often appeared when there were alliances and conflicts. Tubal is traditionally identified with a group of people living in the region of modern-day Turkey. It was known as Anatolia, that land. They were known for their skills in metallurgy and trade, and they were often mentioned alongside Meshech, as we heard before. Both groups were significant players in the trade networks of the region because they dealt in metals and other valuable resources. One last thing before we close off. Something called the Lamsa Bible, Lamsa, translated from the Aramaic. It says, "Son of man, set your face against China and against the land of Mongolia, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him and say." This version, this translation calls Gog China. It's something curious. Let me just see if I could show you all this. What verse was that? 38:2. Genesis 38:2. I typed Genesis, y'all. I meant Ezekiel. Where's my brain today? All right, so check out the Lamsa Bible. It's down here. Translations from Aramaic. Lamsa Bible, Son of man, set your face against China and against the land of Mongolia, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him and say. Now, this is the only place you'll see the word China on this page. So let me just do a quick search. This is the only spot where China is. It's the only version out of all these translations of the Bible. If you check all these translations, the only one that says instead of Gog and the land of Magog, it says China in the land of Mongolia. I can't take that as okay, well, Gog is a leader from the land of China. You can't take that as what it is. Because Lamsa Bible is translating it for whoever reads that, and their version or their reference to China may not be political China today. I know nothing about the Lamsa Bible. So please don't take that one translation and say, okay, well, Gog is China. No, could be, but let's not be, running around calling China Gog and Mongolia, that whole land area, Magog. All right. So in all of this, let me summarize now. We found that there is Gog and Magog mentioned in Revelation, Gog and Magog mentioned in Ezekiel. Magog was one of the grandsons of Noah. His descendants, most likely, would have set up their society north of Israel. Tubal and Meshech, associated with him, would have been hostile lands to Israel. They were involved in producing weapons, metallurgy, and trade. So they were powerful, they were wealthy, and war profiteers. Gog was a leader, a prince, chief prince. Magog was the land he was from. They would come against Israel, and God will miraculously wipe them out with fire. I didn't show those verses, but it's there in Revelation, in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So I guess let me just show that quick before we go. Right. So this paragraph talks about Gog and his crew. They'll be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your hordes and many peoples with you. And they will plan to come upon the mountains of Israel, which had been a continual waste. The people of Israel dwell securely, all of them. And Gog will advance on them. On that day, God says, thoughts will come to devise an evil scheme. And the thoughts would be they're going to rob them and destroy them. And then Ezekiel is told to prophesy. You will come from your place out of the uttermost parts of the north. You'll come against Israel like a cloud. In the latter days, still to come, and God is going to bring them. God is going to, this is part of his plan, to bring them against his nation, but there's for a reason. On the day that Gog shall come against the land of Israel, in my jealousy, my blazing wrath, there'll be a great earthquake, fish, birds, beasts, all creeping things, people, all people will quake at God's presence. Because God is going to summon a sword against Gog. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. With pestilence and bloodshed, I will enter into judgment with him, and I'll rain upon him, upon Gog, and his hordes, and the people who are with him, torrential rains, hailstones, fire, and sulfur. That's how we know they're all going to die. So I didn't read this part, but I showed you the end where the bodies will be there. They'll have to bury them in that land, right, east of the sea. And the people of Israel will take spoils from an enemy they could not beat on their own, an enemy they did not have to fight on their own. God will destroy them. That's Gog of Magog and his hordes. That will happen before the Great Tribulation. What we see in Revelation 20 is after the millennial kingdom. So this is like 1,007 years at least after the first one. So the first battle of Gog and Magog, another preview. We know the Bible and prophecy has a lot of previews. The first battle will be a preview. That hasn't happened yet. The second battle, we're going to come and discuss that next week. Okay, so I would say that anybody who's watching this on YouTube and Facebook, thanks very much for your time. This was lesson 201 of 40 Days Ministries, Friday Night Delight Studies, April 25th. We thank you very much. The first study of Gog and Magog done here today, the first installment. We will most likely conclude this next week. I don't see any reason why it will carry on for longer than that. And wish you the best. God willing, let's hope that we get here to finish this off next week. Take care and goodbye.